Cool. Why don't we move into the next one? What is the best way to save for a house? I'm 22 years old and make $73,000 a year. I'm putting 15% of every paycheck into a Roth 401k with a 6% match. My monthly living expenses come out to be around $1,500 for rent, parking, and utilities. I expect multiple promotions in the next 5 to 8 years, which is my time horizon to buy a house. Ideally, I'd like to skip the starter home and get my forever home around 30 years old. What I'm planning on doing is investing a percentage of my paycheck into an investment account and buying various ETFs to save up for a down payment. Is this the right move?
Yeah. I love the forever home thing.
Yeah. Very optimistic.
Yeah. My life, I'm living in a completely different city than I was when I was 25 years old. Like you just don't know what's going to happen. But regardless, I understand you don't want like a house you have to put a ton of money into and like a rickety old house. You just want something more secure. I'm just going to go with that. So, I think this is a really good question because 5 to 8 years is that timeline, Nick, where we always say like you could potentially put it in the market. If she had said 3 years, like I'd say probably just skip that step and start saving into your high yield savings account and go from there. Yeah. But, I think this person and they may have looked at numbers, already, but how much do you want to spend on your home? Because this is going to be how much you're going to need to save, obviously. So, have you done the calculations on what you can even afford? I know you make 73 right now, but you said over the next few years, you're going to receive some promotions. So, what does that look like? And are you going to have a partner later on? That might also change how much you can afford for a home. So let's say that, you're in the ballpark somewhere of $300,000. How much do you want to put as your down payment? 15,000 is that 5%, and then 20% is about 60K. So let's pretend in this example that they want to put 10% down at about 30,000. Plus, let's say 15,000 for closing costs. So conservatively, this person needs to have about 50,000, give or take in the next few years as they approach the home ownership, if they would like to do the 10% plus their closing costs. Now, if you're truly 8 years out or, 5 to 8 years out, I'm okay with putting it in the market. The rule of thumb is always like anything, if you need it before 5 years, probably not do that just because there's too much risk there. But this is a great opportunity to grow your money a little bit. So I'm probably going to put it in something like an S&P 500 or total stock market, something like that. But I ran a quick calculation on this. So for an 8-year time frame, let's say this person puts $500 monthly into the market. And I gave it like an 8% average, rate of return. That would return, you would get about $66,000 at the end of that. And your contribution would only be $48,000. So there's about $18,000 of growth there. So probably worth your time to actually do what you said here and take this approach to putting it into the market.
Yeah, no, I think, when it comes down to the question this person's asking, like, is this the right move? I think that's a great move to make. Like, know your time horizon, you want to invest over that entire period and you want to save up a down payment. Like, that's the way to do it. There's just a few things in here that like, I would kind of push back on against, right? Like you're making $73,000 per year now. Like, yes, you should expect that your income is going to grow in the next 8 years, but to say 5 to 8, or to say that they're going to receive multiple promotions over this next 5 to 8 years, like don't factor that into the plan until that money's actually hitting your bank account. Yeah. And then there's this idea of the forever home, which is something that I personally just don't believe in. Yeah. Like this person's 22 years old. Are you married? Do you have kids? Because those are the two biggest things that are going to affect like your desired living situation, right? Because if you're not married and you're just looking at, cool, that's going to be my forever home where I'm going to really enjoy it. And then you get married and you have that home, like maybe your wife doesn't like this house, or maybe you two want to buy a home that's yours together. So that's kind of the one thing that I would push back against is this idea of a forever home. Like buy a home that you really enjoy, that you're happy with, and then kind of see what happens and what needs to change in the next 5, 10, 15 years. I think when people attach this idea of a forever home to the thing that they're buying, or a forever car or forever whatever, that's what allows them or gives them the justification to make an emotional decision. And then that's when they end up spending more or putting themselves in a situation where they end up house poor. Yeah, I don't think the strategy that this person's looking at is a bad idea at all. I think that's the way to do it. I would just say they should maybe adjust kind of their expectations around making this purchase when the time comes.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, they don't say, but I'm wondering if are they living at home? I have no idea. Wait, monthly living expenses count? Oh, no, they are renting. Okay. Yeah, I don't really have a problem with this. Like I was going to say, like if they are living at home, like maybe they do want to like live on their own so they can learn what it's like to like run a household, but seems like they're already doing that. So yeah, they're on the right track. I love how they're planning this out though, because at 22 years old, I don't even know what I was doing at 22 years old, but it was not
Yeah.
saving for a house over the next 5 to 8 years. So I love the mindset here.
Yeah. And I'm really glad this person's, he or she, they're talking about putting the money into the market. And I would assume into a taxable brokerage account, because things might change in 5 to 8 years, right? Like they may not, in 5 to 8 years, they're still going to be like within their 20s, maybe just turning 30. Like maybe at that point, they're like, cool, right now is not the time that I want to buy. Maybe the market's not where they want it to be at. And so having that money in a taxable brokerage account, having exposure to the market, but still having flexibility on when you can pull it out, like that's where you give yourself options. I think it would be the wrong decision for this person to be saving up all this money in cash, because with that time horizon, like they're missing out on so many gains. But yeah, I think this person's headed down the right path for sure. And at 22 years old, like it sounds like if they went to college, like they're fresh out of college, they're just getting into adulthood, like putting away 15%, getting a 6% match and making like above what most Americans make. I think that like this person's winning. And if they keep on with this, like by the time they're 30, like they're going to be so far ahead of other people their age.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what I was making at 22 years old. It was definitely not over 30,000. I'll tell you that. So
yeah,
they're like light years ahead. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.